Excellent. Okay, so Adir Ron is the CTO for Europe, Middle EMEA, Microsoft for Startups.
Hey everyone, so very excited to be here. My session is going to take a bit of a different stance. We talked a lot about models and how great they are. I'm going to talk about the fact that that doesn't matter. And let's maybe try and switch gears and understand the platform opportunity and some of the things that us and OpenAI are seeing in the near and longer future. So a little bit about that partnership. Hopefully you've heard about it. If not, our marketing team has done a very poor job, but I think you have. So we've built a big supercomputer, and we've now expanded. We've actually built 30 additional ones just in the past 8 months. OpenAI is bringing their top models and some of the thinkings in terms of building those foundation models. And we're trying to build this all with a AI dev infrastructure that will really help the entire ecosystem to build on top of those models and do that move between a good model and a good product or a good experience. We started off here. This is ChatGPT when we just announced November 2022. I remember when this came out, we kind of played with it. It was super exciting. It blew my mind. Today, even Phi 3, which is our open source, on-edge, small language model, can probably outperform this, which means that in 18 months, we came from something that was super exciting to something that can run on an edge device on a very small model and would be probably outperform this. This is just to give you the sense of models and how fast are we, running with this excitement model. March 2023, I think this is the first time we moved from large language models to large everything models. This is actually taking also voice, video, audio, and a lot of inputs and outputs together. And this is where we're at right now in the journey.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Rocky. I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm awesome. Listen, I got some huge news.
Oh, do tell. I'm all ears.
Well, in a few minutes, I'm going to be interviewing at OpenAI. Have you heard of them?
OpenAI? Huh? Sounds vaguely familiar. Kidding, of course. That's incredible, Rocky. What kind of interview?
Well, it's for a software engineering role, but I just need to know, do I look presentable, professional?
Well, Rocky, you definitely have the I've been coding all night look down, which could actually work in your favor.
Yeah, so this is amazing, and this is like where we're at 18 months after. You can see all of those models are part of Azure OpenAI. The one that you've just seen was GPT-4o, which is the latest one. What you can see in GPT-4o, it is multi-model, input and output together. It's real-time. You've seen that you can actually interrupt it mid-sentence or do some interaction with it. And we are introducing a new voice model that feels super natural. I mean, if you thought that talking to it feels natural, using this, and hopefully in a month from now, everybody will be able to use it. We're just now previewing the last bits of it. It is groundbreaking, and this is all in 18 months. So when people are asking me, what's good about GPT-4o, there's a lot of stats here about how accurate and state-of-the-art performance and visual. But what I would definitely say, and it takes you into a mindset of why that doesn't even matter, it's cheaper and it's faster. So if I'm going to ask you, and this is why I think we should stop obsessing about those models, what do you think GPT-5 would be? Okay, so if this was GPT 4.0, this would be GPT-5, which means bigger, cheaper, faster. And 2026 would be bigger, cheaper, faster. So instead of me, making the rest of my time talking about how great GPT-4o is, and then in 2 months from now, that talk would be not relevant because we're going to talk about something else, I'm going to switch gears and talk about why this matters and how can we look at this from a platform perspective rather than a model perspective. And there's a big opportunity here, especially for startups in the Israeli ecosystem. And it is thinking about AI not as a model, but as a platform. So let's take a second to understand what Microsoft did with it, and maybe it will give you some ideas. So we've been very busy in integrating this into every product. Now, bear in mind, Microsoft is a big company. Each one of those products, from Azure to Office to Windows, had a 3-year roadmap. We knew exactly the features that we want to build. And then when LLMs came, Satya went door to door within our product team and told them, whatever you want to do, delete it. We're not going to do this. We're going to focus on AI. And that didn't happen in one product. It happened across the company. That's a big question. Why did we think that something happened with those models that dramatically changed the trajectory of every product within Microsoft? And those are large projects. It's not a startup, small-sized projects. So this is something that will give you some of the sense of why we think that matters, not from a model perspective, but from a platform perspective. This is how do we think platforms are meeting humans within the complexity and adoption kind of alignment. So when you're starting off, there's a very easy to understand product, very small features, very easy to navigate, and then you want to add more features. You want to give more personalization, complicate some of the things that you can do, drive more complexity to your IP. By the way, sell products. I mean, if we want to sell, if we have Office whatever, and we want to sell Office whatever in 2 years, we need to say there's more features here. But what happens is, as you complicate a product, then adoption drops. And nobody talks about adoption. We're just trying to keep on features and piling on features while understanding that adoption would dramatically reduce at some point. All of the Office, Windows, all of those products now are in very low adoption rate for new features. When we're introducing something in Office whatever, if you think about it, you probably don't even know what's changed. You're paying for it because the whole model is you're going to pay for new features, but you don't care or you don't even know what those features are. So this is, and maybe this visual is great. Obviously, this one has more features, but this one I know how to get hot water in. So that's kind of the whole trajectory, and it's not just right for Microsoft, it's for every product in history. If you're trying to complicate things with screens, with radio buttons, with combo boxes, with a lot of options, wizards, people will get lost. And we think that if you're looking at models as a platform, there's a chance to fix it. Why? One, you've seen universal interface, and that's just rapidly becoming more natural. The conversation we had with Rocky felt exactly like I would talk to you. It also made some crack jokes. It could, be very emotional. We have some EQ bundled on top of it, so it feels very natural. Second piece, it has great reasoning. So it understands what you're trying to say. And even if you're trying to convey a very complicated idea or scenario, it would understand. And then in the middle of it, this is something we're trying to bake into all of those newer products. There's a lot of memory and context. And the session before me talked about RAG, which is one of the options to introduce more memory, more understanding into what we're trying to do. If you're combining all of those three together, then you're creating AI-first experiences, which is an application that uses modern AI to help with complex cognitive tasks. But it's not about the model, it's about reducing the friction to do some of those things. And this is how Copilot came into sense. I want to give you one short example, and then we'll talk about what you can do with it. When we did Copilot for Office, we were doing a lot of surveys. We went to a bank, and we asked them, what do you like about this the most? What do you think the top killer feature of Copilot? The answer was, it can connect to my SAP system and get all of the data if I'm asking for sales or everything. This is amazing, the fact that Copilot can finally talk to SAP. We went, and this was like #1 by far in this bank. We went all the way to understand what's Copilot doing. I mean, it's so exciting. That feature was in the bank for 2013. So that was a feature that sat there for 10 years, nobody used it, and it became the top great feature of Copilot, because it's not about the feature, it's about adoption. And once you understand that, you may have great things within your application, nobody knows how to use them. And when they start using them, they think that Copilot is like magic, because it surfaces a lot of those ideas. There's a lot of stats here. If you want, go to aka.ms/WTI on everything that drives stickiness, adoption, what we've seen in terms of Teams, Office, Windows. People are actually interacting with those products from adoption perspective faster and further than anything that we've ever seen. The oldest Copilot we have is GitHub. And if you're a developer here and you've used GitHub Copilot, you know that you can never go back. Okay, that is super sticky, because that is a different way to use the same technology, but with an LLM-enabled experience. So let's switch gears and talk about AI as a platform. And again, I'm not going to talk about a model. That's going to be right for GPT-5, 6, 7, whatever, okay? The things that we think we can do with it today. So one is assistant, and you've seen some of the assistants here. We've seen some of the things that are happening within the industry. I would mark 3 of them. The move between search bar and AI assistants. You can see the Etsy assistant here. It's a great example. You're searching for something, but you're getting UX or partial UX being built in a very context-based experience personalized to you. So you're actually always building the experience regarding with the conversation. It is multi-model in sense. So it's not just question answer. We're kind of building everything together. The numbers here are amazing. Klarna AI in 1 month moved 2/3 of their support to be autonomous with this, and they're estimating 40 million in profit just from that thing. So let's ask the other question. Why do we think assistants fail? There's 2 reasons here. The biggest one, lack of trust. Nobody likes to talk to a bot. We've killed this probably in 2018 when everybody's tried to generate like bots and everybody hated it. So there's lack of trust. You can't fail. And then there's not a lot of internal knowledge. Obviously, it starts with data. I'm not going to talk about RAG and Fusion. You just heard a great session about that. But you know that this is probably the best way for you to get what the LLM is aware of, but also get some access to internal knowledge and doing some ranking around it. And once you have data and Fusion, access to internal knowledge, that's probably a great recipe for an assistant. I want to maybe, just before moving to the futuristic ones, talk about this. How do you get to build a great copilot or a great assistant? So obviously you can add your data, do RAG, do fine-tuning, and do training. What we've seen in Microsoft startups is about 90% of the use cases, they don't require to do even fine-tuning or training. That means this is purely a developer play at this point. A lot of startups that we're meeting are saying, I'm not an AI startup, I only have developers, I don't have data scientists. That is enough at this point because the models are so strong. If you just have a great developer who understands prompt engineering, and again, this is engineering and RAG, then you can get to really, really high and exciting results. You can see here Azure AI Search, which is a good example of how that looks like. I'm getting the input. I'm doing a lot of calls, going to my shopping cart, going to personalization, trying to build a lot of context, and then sending all of it together to the LLM, and then I'm getting the right response to that specific scenario. One thing that is also something I'm hearing a lot is that this is not scalable. So an internal case study that I want to share here is that both GPTs and Assistant API are built on RAG, by the way, specifically on Azure AI Search. So those are the world's biggest, largest RAG implementations today. OpenAI is actually building it on top of RAG, and that is enough. So we're not seeing fine-tuning or training on top of GPT-4o, and if they can do it, and that's definitely enough for a lot of the use cases here. Let's talk about some of the other futuristic stuff, extensions. I would call it near future. So Assistant is great because it allows us to reduce some of the complexity. But if we're looking at a platform, that actually is created when the economic value of everybody on top of it exceeds the platform itself. And a good example for this is the iPhone. So Apple is doing a lot of money. If you're taking Airbnb, Uber, Netflix, Spotify, all the companies that are sitting and just living on top of that platform, those are generating much more in terms of economic value. So if we're looking at the amount of usage on top of it, ChatGPT and a lot of the other ones, by the way, not just Microsoft, are driving a lot of usage on top of it as a platform. So can we build directly on top of those platforms instead of creating my own separate assistant somewhere on the side? And that's what I would say is probably a really, really great opportunity to look for. It is called AI extensions. It means that you can do continuous handoff with your copilot. So you're sitting on top of the platform, you're using it, but you're an extension or a skill to it. You can take actions in the name of it, and then you can ground it with your own internal data. Let me give you an example with our copilot with Microsoft itself. Again, you can build your own assistant, but you can use the same thing to run directly on a copilot, which means you don't need to do anything not installation, not application, not downloading. If you're using it and it understands that it needs a skill, it can go directly to what you're offering. Let's see that marketplace in action. So this is Copilot. You can ask it, it either knows it or it doesn't have the access to data or to knowledge IP. But then you can also do extensions. So try to see what other skills you can enrich that Copilot without leaving Copilot or leaving the LLM outside to your own assistant. This is a new mechanism of distribution. You can see here there's a great amount of skills. You're installing that skill, and then you can start using it and do some things with it. So if you're trying to look for a recipe for that, obviously grounding is still important, but doing things and thinking about this as a marketplace or as an ecosystem is probably a thing that we need to do now. One comment about this, and you can see it here in the demo, so it's quite easy to switch gears between this LLM and then the other one, but there is some interest here to be first. Because if you're now creating Uber, even if you're doing a better Uber than Uber itself, that's probably not going to touch base, because there's already a lot of people running on top of that platform. So every time we see a platform shift, there's a great opportunity to create a lot of new applications on top of it, and it is happening right now. This thing is 3 weeks old, so we're still very much in the starting point of extensions and skills. I definitely urge you to try and test it and think about, can we run this directly on a platform? Not building this and forcing people to install different applications. There's a lot of ecosystem copilots and skills there already. Lastly, I'll take 1 minute to talk about the future. Again, we mentioned this a little bit in terms of AI automation. Things that were impossible are now difficult, which means we're actually not doing copilot here, we're doing autopilot. They can decide by their own, they're independent, they're responding to events, not just to prompts, and they're acting on someone's behalf. Those agents can have their persona, choose the model, the right data, and what can they function on. Let's see some interesting examples here. One is great. It's called AI flows, which is kind of a way to define a process to an LLM. This is something we're introducing. It's still on early access. It will be available in the next few weeks, but you can start educating how processes look like. This is how to educate on back-end process. This is one of my favorites, which is called RPA, which is just installing it on your desktop and using multi-model. It records what you do, and then he understands when he can do it in your behalf. So for example, I'm responding to an email, I always do something, then at some point it will say, you know what, I understand this is how you do it, let me do this for you. So you can do this either on a back-end or on a front-end perspective. Start recording what you do using that multi-model vision, understanding, to build this into something that you can build. And then lastly is agents running other agents. This is something that was announced last week, AutoGen, which is how to build those agents. And you can see here, humans are not interacting with it. So those are agents that are only there to be used by other agents. For example, we have the workflow. The workflow always understands that it uses that extension to achieve a task. We've seen some extensions here. This is quite crazy. We have a startup here in Israel that is currently having 22% of the users that are using his product are non-humans. And they don't even know how to cater to them. I mean, how do you SEO to an LLM? How do you convince them that you're the best one to use? It's really, really quite crazy if you think about it. So he has like almost a fifth of what he does is coming from non-humans that you never know how to even sell to them or convince them that you're the right one. So this is a very interesting world. I'm guessing there's a lot that's going to happen there. If you want to test AutoGen, it's also a great way to build those skills for multi-agent perspective and not just for humans. One last thing I do want to highlight, we're all about responsible AI, so doing things autonomously also can result in some issues. This is a great example that I like of Air Canada. They were autonomous, and then the agent invented something in terms of the service, and the court in Canada forced Air Canada to respect what the agent invented. Okay, so there's some risk here in terms of getting them to run loose, and there's some things that you also need to think about. There's a big dashboard of responsible AI. I know security is probably the last thing on everybody's mind, but that should be the first thing, because if you want to run autonomous, you need to drive the risk level. So To summarize, we talked about AI as a platform. There's a few things if you look at it. The assistants are here and now. Everybody's doing them. If you're connecting into data, RAG should be enough to create a very good experience to everything across every industry and every application. But that is just a starting point. I would say that for most of them, thinking about either extensions that are running on the LLM itself or automation would probably make much more sense. Before finishing off, this is my shameless plug. If you want to build those things with us, everything is part of the stack for startups. Startup.microsoft.com. There's a M here that is missing, but it's there, believe me. And you can get up to 150K, plus my entire team is here to support you in building either extensions, autopilots, or start off with assistance. That's it. Thank you so much.